Hey, Megan! And swallows you too.
Fuck you! Fuck you, asshole! Die!
The journey began far from the city, on a winding, hilly road where Clover and her friends were returning home after completing a 2-week road trip. But before heading back, they wanted to visit one final place, a place that had been haunting Clover's thoughts ever since her younger sister Melanie disappeared a year ago. Melanie had posted a video from a remote location, and after uploading it, she vanished without a trace. The mystery surrounding her disappearance had consumed Clover, and now, standing at the edge of the unknown, the location in that video seemed to offer the last clue. It was an old shop, now standing before them, seemingly forgotten by time. Though the odds of finding her sister here seemed slim, Clover couldn't bring herself to pass up the opportunity. Megan, the most adventurous of the group and always obsessed with mysterious games, suggested they try a spirit summoning ritual. Maybe, just maybe, they would uncover some hidden truth about Melanie's disappearance. The others were hesitant, finding it strange, but they trusted Megan and out of curiosity, reluctantly agreed. They joined hands, standing in a circle, and began the ritual under Megan's guidance. Just as the air grew thick with an unsettling tension, a van appeared in the distance, distracting them momentarily. Clover, driven by desperation, seized the opportunity. Without hesitation, she entered the shop, asking the shopkeeper if he had seen her sister in the photo she carried. The shopkeeper denied any recognition of Melanie, but offered a chilling theory. The girl in the photo must have been the victim of some accident. He then mentioned that many people had recently gone missing, all linked to a place known as Glore Valley. The name hit Clover like a ton of bricks. For the first time, she had a solid lead. The group quickly piled into the van and made their way toward Glore Valley. But as they drove, the weather took a sudden turn. A heavy downpour soaked the landscape, and the road seemed endless. No matter how many times the driver tried to turn around, they were unable to find their way back. What was strange, however, was how the rain seemed to stop ahead of them, leaving a stretch of road completely dry. Behind them, the storm raged on. As they ventured deeper into the valley, Megan noticed something peculiar, graves in the tall grass. A sense of unease gripped her heart. The others, eager to escape the storm, rushed toward a large mansion in the distance, but Clover, feeling the weight of something sinister in the air, stood still, captivated by the strange weather. She reached out, feeling the rain with her hand. It seemed normal, yet something about it felt off. Just then, a shadow materialized in the mist, and Clover, unable to ignore the pull of her instincts, rushed toward it. Max, her boyfriend, followed right behind her. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, the others began noticing things that didn't add up. At the center of the grand hall stood an enormous hourglass, its sands seemingly frozen in time. Na, curious, picked up a register lying on the table. Flipping through the pages, she found something that made her freeze. Melanie's name appeared several times, each mention followed by cryptic notes. Megan wandered into the bathroom, her senses prickling with dread. The mirror was coated in thick dust, and the faucet refused to drip a single drop of water. Ein, ever the videographer, captured everything, unaware that this strange place was slowly wrapping them all in its grip. As he entered a room, he found missing posters on the walls, all with faces he recognized. Among them was Melanie's. Clover, still driven by a need to find her sister, was outside, searching through the rain, but then a hand grabbed her from behind. It was Max, pulling her back toward the mansion, away from the creeping dread. Inside, the group gathered to share their experiences. Clover spoke up, claiming she had heard Melanie's voice. Just then, Na noticed the clock on the wall. It had started moving on its own, even though no one had touched it. Outside, the sounds of heavy footsteps grew louder, and when they peered out the window, they saw their van being driven away by a mysterious figure, vanishing into the night. Panicked, they locked themselves inside the mansion. With no network, no help, they had no choice but to solve this mystery on their own. They made their way to the basement, where Max noticed strange windows carved into the walls. They resembled ancient architectural designs, adding another layer to the mansion's eerie atmosphere. It was then that Clover, in a state of distress, found an old landline. Desperately, she tried to make a call, but it was useless. Meanwhile, Megan stumbled across a walkie-talkie. She kept calling out, "Is anyone there? Can you hear us?" The group tried to make sense of the strange happenings, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. A loud bang echoed from upstairs. Abe and Nina, who had been on lookout, went to investigate, but never returned. Na, feeling a rising sense of dread, ventured into the corridor, her flashlight casting a shaky beam across the walls. When she turned it on, the sight before her made her freeze. Abe's body, torn and lifeless, lay in front of her. The group rushed upstairs to find Nino too, lying in a pool of blood. Max, now fully aware of the danger they were in, warned them. A masked killer was inside the mansion. Panic ensued, and the group scattered, each trying to find a hiding spot. But the masked figure was relentless. Max, attempting to defend himself, grabbed a chair and swung it at the killer, but it had no effect. The killer struck back, and Max fell, lifeless on the floor. Megan, trembling, hid in a wardrobe, watching as the killer slowly approached her. From behind a door, Clover, with a shaking hand, grabbed a knife and charged at the figure. But the killer didn't flinch. No matter how hard she stabbed, it was as if the killer didn't feel any pain. In a panic, Clover ran from the mansion and straight into the forest, Max close behind. But as they ventured deeper, a chilling sight stopped Clover in her tracks. A shadow that looked eerily familiar. Could it be Melanie? She rushed forward, but just as she reached out, the figure was struck down in an instant. All of a sudden, the ground trembled beneath them, and the hourglass inside the mansion began to turn again, the sands flowing as if time itself had been reset. Everyone was brought back to the moment they first entered the mansion. This time, they remembered everything, the horror, the deaths, and the undeniable truth that something supernatural was at work. Terrified but wiser, they knew one thing for sure. They had to solve this mystery once and for all. The moment the hourglass started turning again, everything reset. Clover and her friends found themselves back at the mansion, reliving the horror they had just experienced. But this time, they remembered everything: their deaths, the eerie mansion, and the sinister forces that seemed to haunt them. Their faces now appeared on the walls, and a chilling realization dawned. They were trapped in a nightmarish loop, dying over and over, only to be brought back to try again. The atmosphere inside the mansion grew heavier, each step taken more deliberate, each glance cast more cautiously. The group knew they had one final chance to end this, but what if they failed? What if this time there was no escaping? Abe, still desperate to leave, suggested they escape by the car, but Na, remembering the strange register with the same names repeated over and over, urged everyone to stay and finish what they had started. There was no escaping this. The mansion, the hourglass, the horrors. They had to find out what it all meant. And so, they waited. The sound of the door banging from outside echoed again. Max and Abe hurried to close it, their faces filled with anxiety. With each passing minute, they grew more desperate, more aware that the walls were closing in around them. Then, a strange voice came over the walkie-talkie. "Clover, you turned out to be the smartest. If you want to see me, come alone into the forest." Without wasting a second, Clover decided to face whatever lay ahead. "I'll go," she said, her voice trembling but determined. The others hesitated, but knew there was no stopping her now. They needed answers. As Clover stepped out into the rain-soaked night, Max tried to follow, but Abe stopped him. Only Clover was called, he said, a grim understanding in his eyes. If we die, we'll come back anyway. Reluctantly, Max agreed, and the rest of the group stayed behind, watching Clover venture into the woods alone. The rain poured harder as she trudged through the dense forest, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, her foot caught in a hunting trap. Clover screamed in pain, but just as quickly, an invisible force dragged her deeper into the shadows. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Abe and Na were alone once again. They crept through the corridors, cautiously making their way toward the exit. They knew the masked killer was out there, waiting. But just as they thought they might escape, the killer appeared, emerging from the darkness with terrifying speed. Their fate was sealed. Out in the woods, Max and Megan, unwilling to stay behind, ventured after Clover. They came across an old half-buried house, its broken windows staring like empty eyes. But before they could reach it, a strange sound filled the air, something dripping from above. Max looked up just in time to see a massive creature descend from the trees, its form grotesque and unnatural. It leaped at them with unrelenting speed. Max and Megan tried to run, but in the chaos, Megan fell, crashing onto a glass roof. The slightest movement could shatter it, but before Max could help her, a demon appeared, dragging her away. Desperation gripped him as he watched his friend being torn from him. He had no choice but to continue searching for Clover, who, unbeknownst to him, was facing a terror all her own. Back at the mansion, the group, now severely depleted, had no choice but to continue. They could hear the agonizing sounds of creatures in the distance. The walls seemed to close in on them. Then, a terrifying figure emerged from the shadows. It was the very same creature Clover had seen earlier. It was her younger sister. The realization hit Clover like a bolt of lightning. This twisted version of Melanie had been transformed into something monstrous by the very forces that had tormented them all. With a surge of strength, Clover shoved it hard, sending it crashing into a rock. For a moment, it lay still. Max, back at the mansion, was still fighting for his life against the masked killer. The struggle was fierce, but together, the group finally overcame the horror they had faced for so long. It was over. The killer had been defeated. Clover, still recovering from the shock of seeing her sister's monstrous form, was desperate to finish this. She needed answers, and she needed to find the key to ending this nightmare once and for all. She quickly began searching the mansion, her mind racing. It wasn't until she found a hidden room that she stumbled upon a file. The name on the paper was familiar, Dr. Hill. Dr. Hill had been the mastermind behind everything. He had used the pain and suffering of those who had died in the mining accident to create this twisted world, a world built on fear, despair, and pain. Clover knew then that Dr. Hill was the key to ending it all. She had to stop him. Just then, the door creaked open. Dr. Hill entered the room, his expression cold and calculating. He explained everything, how the nightmare they were trapped in was the manifestation of human fear, how he had created the horrors in this place to study them. He was the one who had turned their loved ones into demons. He was the one who had cursed them to die over and over, bringing them back again and again. Clover stood her ground. She knew she had no time left. With a swift motion, she grabbed a glass crutch, her mind set on one final act of defiance. She charged at Dr. Hill, determined to end his reign of terror. But just as she moved toward him, a strange force pulled her back, lifting her into the air. In that moment, everything changed. Dr. Hill collapsed, his body crumbling into dust as his twisted mind could no longer control the nightmare. Clover, her heart pounding, grabbed the key from his pocket and rushed to the lab to free Megan from her imprisonment. Max, desperate to escape, ran through the corridors, trying to outrun the creatures that were closing in. But in a final twist of fate, Clover and the others managed to escape the nightmare. They ran through the maze-like halls of the mansion, pushing themselves to their limit. And just when it seemed like the darkness would swallow them whole, they emerged into the light. The first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds, drying the rain-soaked ground. They had escaped, but not without sacrifice. As they climbed into the jeep, their faces pale with exhaustion, they thought they were finally free. But as they drove past the place they had once feared, something horrifying happened.
Their faces appeared on a mysterious CCTV screen. The nightmare, it seemed, was not over, and the story of their terror would continue, forever trapped in a cycle of fear, death, and rebirth. And so the story of Until Dawn came to its tragic, yet eternal end.